Good afternoon. I was going to say good morning then, but it's the afternoon. So, welcome back to another live stream that is going out on Facebook and YouTube at the same time. So, say hello if you're there. So, what I thought we'd do today, and again, it's just a short edit, so we'll only be here for 15-20 minutes, is to look at something that you can do with layers. So, we're going to have, let's just bring that up, we're going to look at this photo. So that's a little edit I did yesterday. So that's how it started. And then again, a very simple edit, but just using a single layer just to kind of maximize what we can do with the lighting, especially if the lighting is not optimal for what you're going to shoot, wrong time of day, don't have reflectors with you, flash lighting or anything like that. Again, like I said in the previous live broadcast, cameras have a great dynamic range. It's just a way of extracting that. And what we've done so far is just use simple sliders most of the time. But of course, the fact that we can use layers too only makes everything a bit more flexible. So let us get started. So we're going to go back to the unedited state. Let's hide our browser. Command B, so we have a bit more space, and then think about how we would start to approach this. So obviously, just by looking at it without getting technical and looking at histograms and all that kind of stuff, we can see it's too dark. So straight away, the first thing we need to do is to bump up the exposure. Now, even if we go to sort of around 1.5 stops, something like this, it's kind of okay for the background and everything else. I wouldn't really want to push it any further, but our dear pony in the front, as he's backlit, is still kind of looking too dark. Now again, what we've done so far is just to try and use the high dynamic range sliders in our other live edits just to kind of balance and bring out all the detail in everything that we need to. But with this shot, it's more of an issue. So first of all, I think that's probably too bright for the background. So I'm going to go around there. So we could think, okay, pony's in shadow, horse, pony, whatever it is. Let's go with pony. He or she is in shadow. So we could think, okay, let's lift the shadows. So if we do that, then we can do so. And something around there is maybe good for the pony, but everything else is kind of washed out. So that's no good. Now we've ended up with a picture that sort of looks flat and uninspiring and so on. So that's no good. So next thing we could think of, okay, let's use the black slider. And that's a little better because I can brighten up the pony, but I probably want to go to something like that and add a bit of contrast. And we're almost there, but it's not really quite realistic enough. Like I have to push this quite hard to get the effect that I want. And now my shadow's getting too bright, and then over here on the right hand side these are also getting too bright. So again, we're left with a bit of an unrealistic shot. So what do we do? So of course the benefit in Capture One is that we can work in layers, and this gives you a good solution to that problem of needing to apply adjustments to only certain areas of the photo. And the way we do that is by creating a mask. So over on our layers tool over here, we can see we have the background layer. So that's what all these edits are on so far. And then we can make additional layers which can target the edits wherever we want, essentially. Now to sort of describe to Capture One where those edits should be, that's done with drawing a mask. So if I grab our paintbrush icon on the layers palette over here and do a quick right click, then this is a way that we can draw a mask. Now there's other ways to draw masks that we won't look at today, like gradient masks. Actually, we might do one. A radial mask, which is like a vignette. And then of course, just drawing with a brush, for example. So what we could do in this situation, we could grab our brush, and I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller and a little bit softer, and then we could just draw on our guy here. Now if I press M on my keyboard, and I'm not going to be very precise, then you can see where the mask lies, like so. So now if I make any edit, let's just grab exposure, then you can see it only happens on that area. So just really simple principle with layers. Now what we could then do is bring up our blacks, for example, and then just brighten up that area. So that's the simplest, easiest way that you can work with a layer. Now what I prefer to do is a slightly longer technique, but I think gives you a better output in the long run. Now, you might be thinking, well, this is a really sloppy mask, David, because I haven't really followed the pony too well, and I would agree, it is kind of sloppy. But at the end of the day, what kind of you want to figure with your masking is that the end result has to look believable. So it doesn't necessarily have to cut perfectly around the edge of something. It just has to look believable. It means that if someone's looking at the photo, they shouldn't scrunch up their nose and think, what on earth did David or whoever it was do with that? Now in this case, because we're using the black slider, it's only affecting the darkest areas. So it's not actually making really any changes to the grass here, because that doesn't fall within the area that the black slider adjusts. So we could actually be a bit sloppier there. Where it does sort of fall apart a bit is probably just around here, is that it's just affecting the back. But what I could do is take my erase brush and then we could just make sure we got rid of that little bit. So if you want to keep it nice and simple, that's option A. Now, if you want to kind of level up your layers creation and make layers a lot more flexible and more dynamic, then we can do something a little bit better. So let's zoom back out and we're going to delete this layer, layer 1. We're going to say minus and get rid of that, and we're going to put it in and do it in a slightly different way. Now, before we go to that, I just want to check questions. Sloka said how to delete a mask. Hopefully you just saw that. That was minus over here. And let's just check from lots of hellos. Good. So we're covering questions so far. Perfect. So how would I approach this? So option 1 was just to draw a quick and dirty mask on there and make your adjustments. What I prefer to do is to make a filled layer first. And what a filled layer is, now you can see it's over the whole image. A filled layer is going to affect the entire photo. So that's like an adjustment layer in Photoshop, for example, if you're a Photoshop user. Now we should always name our layers so we know what the heck they're doing. So let's call this pony. And now we've got a layer over the entire shot. So whatever a slider I drag, you see it's going to affect the entire photo like so. So what did we want to do to fix this one? We wanted to use the black slider. So what I'm going to do now is just dial in the blacks to, I think it's kind of about right. Now it's affecting the whole photo, but we're going to get rid of this layer. I just want to use this technique to dial in the amount of adjustment that I think is correct. So I think the most, and this is important, the most change I would want on our pony here is around here, the maximum that I want to happen. So I don't want to go any brighter in terms of my black slider than this. So that's my maximum. So now what I'm going to do is right click and we're going to say clear mask. So that's going to get rid of my mask. So my filled mask will disappear, but my black adjustment of plus 73 is going to stick because I know that's the maximum I want. So let's say clear mask, and now it's going to darken off again. So now what I can do is grab my brush and we can paint this back in to where we want it. Now the important difference of method A and method B, the first is that now I can properly visualize what the maximum adjustment I think should be. And the second important thing is that we're going to use this option or this slider now called flow. And this slider is really the key into getting the nicest, most believable masks that don't look ugly on the shot. We did have a question on last week's live, one of the live edits. Oh, I'm just going to turn my Wi-Fi off 1 second. Make sure we're using the speedy connection. We did have a question on one of last week's live edits. And the question was, David, I have trouble getting my masks accurate enough. And that's true, because you could be in this situation, like I said at the start, that you want to try and cut your way around the perfect sort of edge of the pony and the hair and all that kind of stuff. And generally that's not what you want to do. You want to keep it nice and believable. So what we're going to do is use flow, as I said. So we're going to turn flow right down, and what flow does is restrict the amount of mask that you're brushing in with each stroke. So if flow is at 100, then as soon as I make a pass of my pen, in this case, or mouse, if you're using it, then it will do that entire adjustment. So that was 73 points on black in one swipe. Now, if we turn flow down, it's a percentage. So one stroke of the pen or mouse would be 5%. So then we can build it up nice and slowly. So now it's much closer to working in the darkroom, if you're as old as me and you remember that, or like drawing with a pencil. The more you draw with a pencil, the thicker and darker the line gets. The more you brush with a paintbrush, the more paint you lay down, and so on. It's the same principle, which is why it's called flow. So now what I can do, I can brush backwards and forwards and just brighten up the areas I want and sort of almost do a bit of light painting. Notice again, I'm not being very critical with my brush. It's still quite big. So if we look at the mask now and press M, you can see what it looks like. So it's going to be a bit more subtle. So I can do a little bit there and stop. And also if I've gone too far, I can grab my erase brush and then we can just take out a little bit if we want. Now my brush and eraser settings are linked. So flow is on 5 for brush and eraser. So when I erase, I'm gradually bringing the adjustment down again, if you like. So if we turn pony on and off, you can see before and after like so. Now, if you want to visualize really what that mask looks out, we can click here and we can say display grayscale mask. Now this will remove the photo, or hide the photo, not remove, I should say. Remove the photo or hide the photo and just show us the mask in grayscale. So that's our mask. So you see it has a little bit of subtlety and nuance on it. So a mask at 100%, so that's letting, if you like, or showing the entire adjustment, will be pure white. Where the mask is black, sort of around here, that means the adjustment is at 0. So anything in between in shades of grey means that we're moderating the adjustment a bit. So now we've got less of our plus 73 black here, the majority here, and then it's fading off nicely on the edges as well. So what that gives us is something which is nice and subtle and more believable than it was before. Now, once again, by putting this on a layer, what we can do is we can also take the opacity down. So if I've gone too far, that's no adjustments. We'll zoom in a bit, and then we can gradually open this up until we think it's about right. And if that's not enough, B for brush, then we can just actually open up here a little bit as well. So the key to a nice layered adjustment is being subtle with your brush. Don't necessarily have to cut around everything, and also exercising that use of flow control too. Let's see if there is any questions. Let's have a look. Ghost says, what's the deal with this photo? Everything is elementary in terms of processing, isn't it? Well, yes and no. Maybe you missed the start, but we spoke about, or I should say on previous live editing sessions, we've just used the sliders and we can balance everything with contrast, brightness for the midtones, the high dynamic range sliders and so on. But just to kind of get a bit of light back into this guy, then it helps to use a layer. So I hope you can appreciate that. Now, if I go back to the background, I might actually add in a bit of clarity, but not that much because it's kind of a high contrasty photo anyway. And I might, if we just go to our basic color editor, let's just darken our sky down a little bit. And pretty much that's where I would stop. Do we want to crop? And also I think it's slightly wonky. So what I like to do, if we go to our rotation and flip, if I just use my arrow keys, I can just shift arrow down and just to rotate, just to kind of jog the rotation slightly. So there we go. So I hope that satisfies you, Ghost. And no need to apologize. It's a perfectly good question. Mark, can you use this masking technique for sharpening? Yeah, absolutely. And quite often if you've got, I don't know what the depth of field's like on this shot. So he's just falling out of focus. So if you wanted to sharpen up a subject more than the other, it doesn't necessarily make sense to heap loads of sharpness in on the background layer, because it can affect, obviously in the outer focus areas, it might increase noise and so on. So Mark, absolutely, if you want to bring a bit of sharpness to the subject, then there's no reason why you couldn't use sharpening on the layer as well. Actually, on our pony, I could also use the same layer to boost sharpening if I wanted to as well. So that's a great question. Ryan, that's a good tip as well. You can also start your adjustment with 50%. I tend to go to around 80 because I find 50 is maybe not enough. So 80 gives you the ability to increase what you did or decrease what you did. But as I said at the start, what I tend to do is favour when I draw my adjustment in, what's the maximum I think I'm going to go to? And then I might go 10% over that, just so I get that wiggle room as well. Auto mask brush option, Yuri was asking, is it the same as in Lightroom? Pretty much. So when you're masking with the brush, you can say auto mask, and then when it detects a difference between the little inner circle and the outer circle, then the mask will snap to that edge. But generally, I don't find I need to use that. Something else we can look at in other sessions is luminosity masking. Making a mask from the color editor is often a quicker way than perhaps using the auto mask, but it is the same principle as well. Does the brush have any keyboard shortcuts? Yes. So if we go to edit keyboard shortcuts, that was Ken. Hi Ken. So if I type in brush, then we've got these various different shortcuts as well. So it's square bracket like Photoshop for the default, but you can add shortcuts for opacity, flow, size, hardness, and everything as well. So just type in brush to find it. That's the easiest way to do it. Kyle, can you make a mask based on a color range? Yes, you can. If you want to look at it in detail, what I suggest is go to our Learning Hub and look at our advanced masking tutorials. That's learn.capture1.com. And in there you'll find all kinds of tutorials, but one of them, if we just go to color editor, so if I just pick this guy, let's go to the background actually, let's just clear that. If I go to the background and just pick our pony again, now we've got sort of the range just here. Now I haven't refined it or anything, but what you can do is say create mask layer from selection. So that will essentially turn your, excuse me, itchy back, that will essentially turn your color selection into a mask. So that's often a better way to mask than auto masking. Let's see. Is there a list of adjustments that can or can't be applied to a layer? Easy thing to remember. It's everything except for black and white tool, film grain, and the vignetting tool. And that's the basic vignette tool. So that's this one. So that you can't use on a layer, but you can use the much more sophisticated radial tool. Now, if we go to a layer, who was asking that? Toria, you can see any tool that can work on a layer has this little paintbrush next to it. So you can see everything that's layer compatible. Note Clarity has one, vignetting doesn't. If we go to another tool set, then you can see color editor, color balance, white balance, and so on. Now these tools don't because they're not editing tools, they're like base tools. But of all the editing tools, it's pretty much everything except black and white, vignetting, film grain. And that's not because we don't think it's a good idea, it's just the mechanics of how Capture One works under the hood doesn't gel properly with black and white, film grain, and so on. Vignetting, there's no point because you've got the radial tool as well. Alrighty, how was that for time? So I've got two things to mention. Later today, we're going to launch a 30-day challenge for you to take. What we've done is curate a list of different training materials. And that just takes you through something to do every single day. Could be a tutorial, could be a webinar, could be a blog post to read, just to kind of mix it up a little bit. We start basic, just to get the sort of general things going on. And then we increase the sort of level, if you like, to do more advanced techniques. It's going to be on our social media channel, so make sure to follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and so on and so forth. Also, if you're on a trial and haven't yet purchased, we've got a 25% spring campaign for Capture One, Sony, and Fujifilm. So if my colleague is alert in the background, she'll update the commentary with the description and relevant links and so on. Or when we finish the live broadcast and it goes up, then we can also edit the links there as well. So just keep an eye out on the commentary and also when we finish the upload. Okay, so I hope you found that useful today. We're going to be back on Friday at the same time, and I'm going to bring a guest with me as well, which is easy to do. That's one of our ambassadors, Tina Eisen. She's a commercial editorial photographer for beauty genre mostly. So she's going to hop on, do a quick edit, show a couple of things that she does to finish in Photoshop. And again, that will last around 20 minutes to half an hour as well. So come back at the same time and watch. And there we go. Great. And I can see Capture One. My colleague has just posted the links that we were speaking about. All right. Thanks for your time again today. I hope that was useful. It's nice to always engage with you guys and have some human contact in our solitary confinement as it is at the moment. So enjoy the rest of your day. And if you're free in just around an hour, there's also a webinar I'm doing with another guest, Rachel Jones-Ross, who's going to talk all about nightscape photography as well. So if you go to learn.captureone.com, you'll see the webinars are stuck at the top, and look for the one with Rachel and sign up for that. If you're free in an hour or so, you can join us for another hour after that. All right, take care and see you soon, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye now.